welcome back to Old Iron Talk. I'm your host, Callie Gurton,
And I'm your producer, Michaela.
and today we are talking with Erik Larson. Erik has been collecting antique cars, tractors, and some hit or miss engines since he's retired. He has some awesome YouTube videos that we encourage everyone to go check out after you watch our podcast that he does a really good job of putting together during his restorations. Some of the awesome items that he's collected include a Fordson F, a Willys Jeep, and then a Fairbanks Morris engine. Michaela, I know you're really into Jeeps. What do you think about the Willys Jeep?
I'm actually very excited to hear about the Willys Jeep because, yes, me and my husband are very much into Jeeping. And I actually thought of something to share with you that's
Oh,
kind of a tractor fact. So, did you know that the Jeeps were used in the 1940s as tractors?
I did not know that. No.
They actually came out with a Jeep tractor in the 1950s.
That's very cool. Well, maybe we'll have to look up some more information about those. That is awesome. Yes, Michaela is really into Jeep, so I know you're going to be excited about learning about his Willys Jeep. But we're excited to show you guys his collection and talk about what he has done along the way. So let's get to chatting with Erik. All right, so we're here with Erik Larson today, and Erik has built his collection with tractors, antique vehicles, and some hit or miss engines. Erik, how did you kind of get started with the collecting hobby? Did you grow up on a farm? What got you interested in the different aspects that you've chosen to collect?
Well, I'm not a farmer, but I've been interested in old cars my whole life. And when we retired about 5 years ago, we moved out to the country with some property, and I needed a tractor to kind of help us with property maintenance and
Mm-hmm.
chores and things. So, because I was already into old cars, I wanted to get an old tractor. I
Okay.
didn't want to get something new. That's no fun, right?
Gotta have something to work
So,
on.
yeah. So I got the first tractor, and that kind of started the obsession with the tractors for me because like I say, I was already into cars.
Mm-hmm.
But once I got that first tractor, I was hooked. And then in the last 5 years, I've had 11 tractors since then.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
Yeah, I'd say you caught the bug for sure then.
I did. I love it. It's fun.
So you said you were into cars first. What was your first purchase?
My first antique vehicle was a 1923 Ford Model T.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've still got four Model Ts currently. And they're kind of like the old tractors. They require a lot of maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
And they're relatively simple to work on. I enjoy it. I like driving them. I like working on them.
Okay, so do you still have the one that you originally bought, or have you sold that one?
I still have it.
You do still have it. Okay. When you got it, what kind of condition was that in?
It had pretty good paint. It looked pretty good, from a distance, but it had a lot of mechanical issues that I was not aware of. And
Okay.
not too much longer after that, the motor failed.
Oh.
So I learned real quick about those engines and how to fix them and everything
Mm-hmm.
else. So yeah, so I had to get I wasn't ready yet to rebuild my own Ford Model T motor, so I had that one rebuilt, and
Okay.
it's in good condition now.
And was that like a local purchase, or where did you find that one?
That was a local purchase through a
Okay.
friend of a friend.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got it for a pretty good price. I thought it was in better condition than it was, but that
Mm-hmm.
happens
It
sometimes, right?
does. Yes, that does happen.
Yeah.
So you said that one you had somebody else rebuild the engine, but since then, have you done a rebuild on one of your Model Ts yourself?
I have not done any engine rebuilds, but like I say, they require a lot of maintenance and a lot of repairs.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done just about everything else that you need to do on a car. Uh, Wheels, ignition systems, carburetors,
Okay.
you name it. I've done pretty much everything except rebuild one of those old engines.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
very cool. And have you kind of self-taught yourself? Did you have somebody help you along the way, or how did you learn how to do all that stuff?
Well, like I said, I've been into old cars all my life, so I kind of picked up a little bit of knowledge throughout my life here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to research. When something needs to be done or something needs to be fixed, I really dive into it. I really do a lot of research and take my time on it. And for me, being retired and not having a time frame to fix these things, I really take my time and try to do it right. So
Well,
I
good.
don't try to rush anything. I try to make sure I understand what I'm doing before I dive in.
Well, that's probably a good thing. That probably helps you in the long run. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wouldn't say that's a bad thing. Okay,
yeah.
so now in addition to the Model Ts, I know you also said at some point, I don't know if you still have it, but I believe you said in one of your YouTube videos it was your cousin's, the Willys Jeep.
Yes, that's my current project. That's a
Okay.
1952 Willys 4x4 Jeep truck. And that's something that's sort of out of my wheelhouse a little bit because it's not necessarily an antique like the Model Ts are, but it's still
Mm-hmm.
old and it still requires a lot of maintenance and everything else. So I'm currently going through that bumper to bumper mechanically, make sure everything works, and if it doesn't work, I'm fixing it. And
Okay.
then when I get through the mechanical restoration, if you will, we're going to think about what we want to do aesthetically, like paint job
Mm-hmm.
or not, or what. But all that stuff is very expensive, so
Yes, yeah.
just going slowly, a little bit at a time. But it's a really fun project, and it's a cool car. I like it.
What is the biggest challenge you have faced with that one?
With the Willys,
Yes.
um, well, I'm just about ready to do the brakes on that. And
Okay.
even though I haven't started that project, I'm saying that's going to be the biggest challenge so far. It's just those old drums when you haven't taken them off the vehicle for 50 years, let's say, they're
Mm-hmm.
they're hard to get off. Things are rusty. I think it's going to be a challenge. Um, but besides that, I did have, as soon as I got the truck, I had to take the engine out right away and replace the ring gear on the flywheel because the teeth were all kind of messed up and they weren't
Okay.
engaging with the starter. So right off the bat, I had to dive in and pull the engine, and so that was a bit of a challenge.
I would imagine so. I did see that on your YouTube, and I thought it was very entertaining to watch when you were putting it on your grill to warm it up to the right temperature. Um,
Yeah,
Very innovative, I would say. That was
thank
good.
you. That was a total experiment. I wasn't sure if it was going to work or not, but it
Yeah,
worked perfectly. So I was so happy with that.
that was very cool. Okay, I've got to ask though, I didn't get completely through the video. I know when you were putting it back together, I saw that you had forgotten to do a step. What was the step that you forgot when you were going to put that back on the engine?
So on the Willys motor, I call it a backing plate. It's a piece of tin. It's a piece of metal that goes between the engine and the transmission.
Okay.
And its function is to kind of align the engine with the transmission. That's where a lot of the mounting bolts go through.
Okay.
So, and it goes behind the flywheel. And unfortunately, I had put the flywheel on with the pressure plate and the clutch and did all that work. And then I got done. It's like, oh, I forgot the backing plate. And
Oh
and I
no.
had the engine all the way in the truck.
Oh
So I had to
no.
pull it back out, put it back on the ground, take all that stuff off, and then put the backing plate on. So that was
Oh no.
frustrating, but we got her done in the end.
I would imagine so. That would be very frustrating.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said growing up you always had like a love for the antique cars. So when you guys moved, what was your first antique tractor purchase?
The first antique tractor was a 1947 Ford 2N, and in very original condition. Still, it was still all gray. It had not been
Wow.
modified. It was still 6 volts. And most of the systems on it worked when I got it. I was able to get it and then start using it around the property right away.
Okay.
I still have that tractor today. It's one of my most reliable tractors that I own. I have had to do some work on that. I had to replace the radiator, clean the carburetor, some ignition system stuff. But overall,
Mm-hmm.
it's been a really good tractor.
Well, good. What kind of things do you use it for? Do you use that as like a mowing tractor, chore tractor? What all do you use it for?
Yeah, well, it's funny because when I first got that was the only tractor we had. So I used it for I had a big brush hog for mowing our
Mm-hmm.
fields. I had a rear blade for scraping our driveway and grading the driveway. And I have this Ferguson transport box, which is kind of a interesting thing. It's like a tote or like almost like a truck bed that you can attach to the back of the tractor, and you can tote wood in that and all kinds of other
Okay.
things. So when we first got that tractor, I used it for all that stuff and more. And then when I started getting other tractors, unfortunately, I'm using the Ford 2N less and less now because I have other tractors and bigger ones for heavier duty operations, you know.
Very cool. Well, that's good. I'm glad it's been a neat and utility tractor even for you. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I saw too, you said you had a 1924 Fordson F. Is that correct?
Yes, that's one of my favorites.
I bet. That's a pretty cool tractor. When did you get that one?
I got that, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. That was also very soon after we moved to this new property after we retired. And the Fordson F is special to me because it was made in the same era as the Model T. You know, the same time the Model Ts were being built, it was being built. And I knew that I wanted one for a few years, and I check the ads all the time. I'm kind of a nerd that way too. Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And a Fordson F just popped up on Facebook Marketplace one day, like 15 minutes from my house, and I had to go look at it, and it was completely left to rot, left to die out in the field. It was just rusting away. The engine was seized.
Oh man.
But I bought it anyway, and I got it back to life. I saved it from the grave. So,
well,
and
that's awesome.
it runs and drives today.
Did you do just a mechanical restoration to that, or did you do any painting or anything like that with it?
I just did the mechanical work.
Okay.
You know, it was all pretty rusty, and I'm such a lover of these old tractors. In my opinion, they don't all have to be shiny and pretty to be appreciated.
I agree. Right? Yep, I agree.
So this one in particular, it's very, very old, and I just wanted to leave it that way. I just wanted to sort of preserve history with that one, and I didn't feel like painting it.
Well, that's awesome. I like when, as people say, they're in like their original work clothes. So I like that you left it the way that
there you go.
is. Yep, I like that. Now with the Fordson F tractors, can you tell everybody why were those referred to as MOM or MOM tractors?
Yes, MOM or MOM refers to Ministry of Munitions. Those were if I'm correct in this, those were the very first Fordson Fs that were ever made. And those were the ones in Europe, I want to say 1917, 1918, around World War I, to help those folks over there with their farming.
Yep, and help with the food production. Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, now I saw on your YouTube too, which I thought this was pretty cool. You did a little study comparing running, I believe you did it on your Fordson and maybe your John Deere, running those tractors on gasoline versus kerosene. Can you give us a brief overview on your findings from doing that?
Yeah, so that was a fun project. I had heard, other enthusiasts saying, back in the 40s or 50s or whenever these old tractors were, a lot of them were made to run on kerosene, including the Fordson F and including that John Deere B that I had in the video. And I just plainly wanted to see how they would run on kerosene. My experiment wasn't overly scientific. I just wanted to introduce kerosene into the system and see if they would run and how they would run. And they run very well. The only, I guess, finding or the outcome of the experiment was that they tend to run a little bit hotter on kerosene, temperature wise. And I think the kerosene, I want to say the kerosene burned longer than gasoline, but now I can't remember.
I think that's what you had said in that video. Yes, is that it burned longer? Yeah. Yeah,
it was a really fun experiment, and like I said, it was really interesting to me when I made the switch over from gasoline to kerosene. I could not tell by the way the tractor was running. It ran the same.
Yeah, that's crazy. That is really cool. I enjoy that you did that. It's kind of cool the things that you've been able to do with these tractors and your vehicles, and I really enjoy too that you're documenting your journey. So good job with that.
Thank you. I enjoy it. It's a fun hobby.
I bet. Okay, so while we're kind of talking about that, can you let everybody know where they can watch your videos or what name can they find your videos under?
It's on YouTube and the channel called Antique Cars and Stuff. And yeah, please look that up. I really enjoy making the videos. I've gotten some positive feedback from the videos
Mm-hmm.
from people that watch them. And it's, like I said, I'm retired now, so it's something that I do for fun. It's a hobby. And I like making the videos just as much as I like working on the old
Yeah.
tractors. Yeah,
Do you do your own editing and everything for those too?
I do. I do all
Wow.
the filming
Yeah.
myself and the editing. And as you know, editing takes a very long time,
Yes, it does.
you know?
Yes, it does.
So beside, I'm doing the mechanical work, and then you've got a camera, sometimes two cameras set up.
Mm-hmm.
So you're always having to monkey with them and get them in the right position, make sure the lighting is good and the audio is good. And then you have to get it onto the computer. And I don't know what the ratio is to like actual working on the tractor and editing, but I bet there's way more hours in editing.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would say probably. It's crazy, yes. It can take a
Yeah.
long time to edit videos. Okay, so I know by looking at your list of what you've collected over the years, I would not say you are brand specific.
Right.
But during like your collecting and working and restoring, have you found a brand that you think is easier to work on compared to another?
That's a good question. When it comes to the tractors, I kind of gravitate to Ford and Farmall,
Okay.
and I think they're both pretty straightforward as far as the ease of the mechanical work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the I also am a fan of the Alice Chalmers. Those are very nice tractors. Pretty easy to work on them too. The John Deere's, I'm a fan of a John Deere, but they're sort of a different animal,
Mm-hmm.
and I've only owned one of those so far. I'd like to own more in the future. But to answer your question, I would say Ford and Farmall
Okay.
mostly. Yeah.
Yeah. I have heard that before, and I've heard, like you had said, Alice Chalmers. A lot of people tend to kind of gravitate towards those too.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I know you have a couple Farmall tractors too. You have a Super A and a Cub,
Yeah, right.
and you have a regular too, don't you? You have a 1927 Farmall regular.
Correct. I did. I sold that one, but
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
And when you got the regular, the 27 regular, what kind of condition was that in, and what did you do to that?
Yeah, it's fun because all these tractors that I get, they're all in different states when I find them. This one had gotten a paint job, which is unusual for me. Most of the stuff I get is not pretty. Some of it is, but most of it isn't. This one had a good paint job on it, and the previous owner had rebuilt the entire engine and transmission,
Wow.
new wheels and tires, you name it, and then he never started it. So
Wow.
the tractor went to auction after that gentleman finished all that hard work, and
Mm-hmm.
then somebody bought it at auction, and he never started it. He just put it in his collection.
Oh my gosh.
And then that's when I got it from that gentleman,
Okay.
and I got it back to my house. And the first thing I wanted to do was start it to see if it
Yeah.
actually runs. But I did my standard inspection on it to see what kind of condition it was in. And then I did get it running after not too much work, but that was a big tractor. It's a heavy tractor, and it only had a hand crank in front. It
Okay.
was a very difficult tractor to hand crank versus a smaller, like a Farmall Cub
Yes. Yeah.
or smaller tractor. It was just so big and stiff, and to compound that, the engine had just been rebuilt, so it was all tight and it was very difficult to spin. But that was a fun project. I really liked it.
Well, good. I do like older Farmall tractors too. I just like how they look. So yeah, that's cool. Okay, so out of the tractors that you have, which ones do you use like regularly around your farm, and which ones do you just kind of play with essentially?
Sure. So I use my Ford 960 all the time for brush cutting and mowing the fields.
Okay.
Um, I use the we have a long driveway that runs out to the street, so it's kind of a big deal to take our garbage down to the street every week. So I use the Farmall cub to run the garbage down to the
Yeah.
street, and I also use that for pulling tree branches and things that we cut down
Okay.
for property maintenance, just the smaller jobs. But we use the cub a lot. I use the Farmall Super 8 for sort of rock dragging the front of our house. We have a big
Mm-hmm.
area up front with rocks, and every once in a while you have to drag that and keep it smooth. The Case DC that I've just finished a project on recently, I've got a blade on the back of it. It's going to be my tractor for grading the driveway, grading that long
Okay.
driveway that I mentioned. And then one of my newer purchases, the Ford 1964 Ford 4000 with the front loader. I found that we use that all the time to lift things.
Yeah.
Even with my other projects, you can lift engines with the loader. You can lift
Mm-hmm.
heavy wheels or whatever the case may be. The ones that I don't use are the Fordson F. It's just too old, and
Yes.
it's really impractical to try to use
Mm-hmm.
it. And the Alice Chalmers WD-45. It's a beautiful, powerful tractor. I absolutely love it, but I haven't found a use for it
Okay.
yet.
You'll
So
get
it's
one.
probably the one that I use. It's probably the one that I use the least.
Okay. Well, I'm sure you'll find a use one day.
Yeah.
Um, Saying that, just kind of a fun fact with those tractors, the WDs were actually the first Alice Chalmers tractor that had power steering. So that's kind of a cool fact about them.
I did not know that. That is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Okay, I want to go back to your Case DC that you had mentioned. I know
Yes.
I also saw when you were working on that one that you discovered a coolant leak. Can you kind of tell us how you figured that out, how you fixed it? What was your process for that?
Well, that was a big project. I just bought that tractor locally for super cheap. I thought I'd sort of hit, the home run with that one. I got it home and started up. I was able to drive it and everything. And as soon as the first time I got up to operating temperature, it started blowing a bunch of white smoke out the stack,
Oh.
which is an indication of that it's burning coolant.
Mm-hmm.
And I checked the oil, and the oil was all milky, and it didn't look like oil anymore. It was totally contaminated with coolant. And then I checked inside the radiator, and the radiator literally had puddles of oil floating around in the coolant. So there was massive cross contamination there. So I was hoping it was just going to be a head gasket, but that was not the case. It was actually that engine has sleeves in it, cylinder sleeves that can be removed. And those sleeves have O-rings around the base of them to separate the crankcase from the coolant, from the water jacket area. And there was, I think, 2 or 3 of those that were bad, that had chunks missing in them. So that's where the cross contamination was coming in. And
yeah, that would be quite the project.
It was a difficult project, and it was hard to get parts for that one.
Yeah.
It took me probably 3, maybe 4 months to find all the parts that I needed, and then another 3 or 4 months to get it fixed.
Yeah, that's quite the project for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never know. Sometimes you think you may be getting a deal, but you just never know sometimes. Okay, so outside of that, do you still have all 3 engines that you told us about?
All 3, yes, I do.
Okay.
I have. Yeah, go ahead.
What gave you the interest to buy those?
Well, if we talk about the 1923 Fairbanks Morse hit and miss, those are completely impractical. They're not much use in the modern era for much, but they're super cool. They're a great conversation piece. Hit and miss engine. I got that from a good friend's father, who was a collector of hit and miss stationary engines, and he was downsizing his collection. And I was just in the right place at the right time, and he made me a good deal on it, and I just had to have it. It's just so cool. They're not super practical to use these days for much of anything, but they're really cool. They're a great conversation piece, and this one still runs great.
Did it run when you got it then, I assume?
It did, yeah.
Okay.
He did a great job of maintaining all his engines, and all I had to do is keep maintaining it, and it runs
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
So how often would you say you get that out and run it? Do you run it like a couple times a year or?
Yeah, pretty much. It's
Yeah.
in my shop where I see it every day when I go out there, so I can enjoy it just by
Mm-hmm.
looking at it. But I only start it up a couple times a year just to make
Okay.
sure that it's still good, you know.
Yes. Okay, now the other two that you have is you have a 37 Maytag washing machine engine. How did you
Mhm.
come across that?
One of the things I like to do is go to swap meets and estate sales and things, and this was at a swap meet. It was pretty bad condition. The guy didn't want a lot of money for it, so I took a chance on it, not knowing anything about it. The motor did spin when I bought it, so at least I knew it wasn't stuck. But I got it back home, got it running pretty much right away. And then I thought it would be fun to do. I'm not a big restoration type guy. I like to fix
Mm-hmm.
things and make things work, but I don't restore many things.
Okay.
But that little engine I thought would be a fun restoration project, and it was. I took it completely apart and cleaned it thoroughly and did the engine work to it, put it back together and painted it, and it's a nice looking little engine.
Well, that's awesome.
And it's
Good.
unique. You know, a lot of people didn't even know those engines existed. They're
Yes, a
fun.
lot. Yep, they are unique. We sell a lot of like vintage washing machines and parts, and actually, let's see, a year ago, 2 years ago now, we sold a very big like Maytag collection. So yeah, there is some of that stuff out there, but you don't always see it, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, now the last one you had was the Army generator. Do you still have that? You said yes, I believe.
I,
Okay.
I do still have it.
And how did you come across that one?
That one I found locally on Facebook Marketplace. So, you know, like I said, I checked the ads a lot, and that was another thing I kind of took a chance on. I didn't know much about it, and neither did the person that I bought it from. They didn't know much about it. They just had it sitting in the corner of the garage collecting dust. So I brought it home and kind of went through it and checked all the systems and got it running. It doesn't really match the rest of my stuff. I don't know if I consider that an antique, but 1967 is still old, and it's still pretty cool. And this one is neat because it's in very original condition. Nobody has messed with it or modified it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's pretty high on the cool factor. You know, it's still painted army green, and it's two-cylinder, and it's just a different type of engine that was fun to work on.
I bet. Well, cool. Okay,
Yeah.
so I've got to ask you, you're kind of unique to the people that we generally talk to because a lot of people that we interview and talk to, they grew up in the hobby or their grandfather collected or they had some tie to the collecting world. Do you have any recommendations or suggestions for somebody who maybe doesn't have that tie but would be interested in getting started in the collecting hobby?
Yeah, if we're talking about tractors or even old cars, um, find something. Well, it's best to get started in the hobby, in my opinion, through a friend. So somebody
Mm-hmm.
that can guide you on your first purchase. It's pretty tough if you just go out blind and try to buy something that you don't know about on your own.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can have somebody help you with that first purchase and just sort of, you know, get you going, and then from there, all it takes is a little bit of passion and patience and for me, I got hooked right away on it. So that's
Yeah.
what I would say. You know, get
Okay.
somebody to help you with that first purchase.
Yes, I think that's a very good recommendation. I think that does make a big difference if you have somebody there to kind of help you that knows a little bit about what, yeah, is
Yeah.
going on. Okay, so I guess my last question then for you is going to be in each category, so what you collect cars, tractors, engines, do you have what is like the next item on your bucket list that you would like to try and buy?
In each category,
Yes.
you said?
Yep. Yep.
Um, well, as far as the antique cars go, I'd like to venture out away from the Fords
Okay.
for something different. And I've
Mm-hmm.
seen an old Chevrolet from the 20s. A friend of mine has one of those that's really that's really interesting, and it's a completely different animal from the Ford. So
Mm-hmm.
like an old Chevy, antique Chevy
Very cool.
someday. As far as tractors, there's Fordson Major E27N
Mm-hmm.
is kind of a dream tractor that I'd like to find someday, but I've never even seen one of those in person. I think
Yeah,
they're
I
mostly
can't.
over in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
but they're just absolutely beautiful to me anyway, and I'll keep my eye out for
There
that.
you go.
The engines, the engines, maybe another hit and miss someday, but no rush on that. That'll be low priority.
Yeah. Well, good. Okay, well, I lied. I kind of have one more question. With
Okay.
cars, now that you said that, I noticed up until you've been working on the Jeep, all of them are pre 1930. Do you prefer the like not pre 1930 vehicles?
I would say for the most part, yes.
Okay.
I find them I find them more interesting just because they're
Mm-hmm.
sort of primitive,
Yes.
and I'm no mechanical genius, so the simpler the better,
Mm-hmm.
and those old cars are very simple to work on. So yeah, I gravitate towards the antiques, but I still like the 1930s, 40s, and 50s cars too. I had a 56 Chevy Bel Air that I
Okay.
absolutely loved. And this Willys Jeep is fun to work on,
Mm-hmm.
but generally I prefer the antiques just because they're more interesting to me.
Yeah, I understand that. I think that, yeah, I just think they're cool. And I also think it's awesome when people like you buy them and preserve their history too. So that's great. I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today. It was great to learn about your items. And like I said, I kind of enjoy seeing the perspective of somebody who didn't grow up in the hobby. So I appreciate you coming on here with us today.
very good. Thank you very much. I enjoyed
Yep.
it.
Thank you.
You can find all your source material for our episodes on our website, oldirongarage.com. We encourage everyone to join us on Old Iron Garage and connect with other collectors. Again, we'd like to thank Erik for joining us today. We really enjoyed seeing his collection and learning about his restorations. You can find Erik on YouTube and TikTok by searching Antique Cars and Stuff. Don't forget you can submit your collection photos to info@oldirongarage.com to be featured at the end of our episodes. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or would like to join us on a future episode of Old Iron Talk. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.